One year, we had our continuing professional education forum, and it was just for the Office of Audit. So in our Inspector General, we had many different agencies and divisions. And so that particular year, the entire Office of Audit nationwide descended upon Atlanta. And my director asked my manager to ask me to organize the lunch and dinner activities and one fun event that the whole group could participate in. And I'm like, okay, why did he call directly? Chicken. All right, so now, you know my peers from all over the country are going to be there, right? So no pressure. But not just the peers, their managers, their directors, and their executives, the Assistant Inspector General for Audit. I'm like, dang, dude, that's a lot. So it's about 40 people. So I began contacting all the different restaurants in the area close to our building so we can walk there for lunch. And then in the evening, I knew, some restaurants around town that we all could drive to. And I figured, what would be a fun event to do? Top golf. So I called them and arranged to get a couple of lanes just for us. So I got everything planned, right? So it was about 40 or 50 people, I don't really remember. And I really began to understand the idiom, herding cats. So much better. All right, the lunchtime thing, we're all walking. Can you imagine 25, 30 people walking to lunch together, right? I'm like, okay, we got to be there, we got to be back at such and such a time, blah, 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 and all this. Come on, let's go. Look, I never saw that before. I was like, Jesus. Whew. And on the final day, like I said, we did the Topgolf thing. And I wanted everything to be perfect because I was into that perfectionism thing, I wanted everything to be perfect. But other human beings were involved. So, how perfect could it really be? And I had to work out some kinks, the restaurant and the staff, even though I called ahead of time and said, this is how many, because not all 40 or 50 people wanted to eat certain things. So I made sure I got the head count for that day. 25, okay, the next day, 30, okay, this is how many are coming. Make sure the table, yes, Miss Bell, we got everything ready for you. I'm like, okay, we're coming. Sure enough, we get there. We don't have enough chairs. We don't have enough tables. I'm like, okay, but it all worked out. It all worked out. Bumps along the way. So, for the dinner events, it was even better. I gave them the address, right? Now, I'm trying to figure out, okay, this group's in this hotel, this group's in that hotel. I don't have to worry about the in-town people because they know Atlanta. I don't have to worry about them. So they know how to get to the different restaurants. So I send out the name of the restaurant, the address of the restaurant, the phone number to the restaurant, my phone number. Text me if you get lost. They got lost. And this is in the time where we have GPS, so I'm not sure. Yeah, it was cats. But anyway, on the final day, there was maybe 20 people decided that they wanted to do Topgolf. All right, so I had enough lanes and everything. And so, needless to say, it was a stressful week for me, right? I even had to give a presentation, a continuing education presentation. So on top of that, I had to know my stuff. All right, so I'm stressed, and I'm like, I'm going to hit this ball over in Marietta somewhere. And the first swing, I must say, was pretty impressive. I did really good. It went pretty far. So the next time I was up for the swing, I'm thinking, I'm going to hit this at the back of the gate, right? So I take my time. I cue up. I'm like feeling that stress. Oh, I'm going to knock it out, right? And I swing I swing the club, and I missed. But the momentum of the force from my swing kept me going. And I found myself being lifted up in the air. And then I'm falling on my back. And I fell on my back so hard, all the air came out of my body. And I'm like, everybody ran. The AGA, the Assistant Inspector General, my director, all my teammates, all ran over. They're kneeling down. They're like, and my eyes are closed because I just couldn't believe I just did that. And I can't breathe. And so when I finally opened my eyes and I looked up and everybody's standing over me, looking at me in terror. Did she break something? Is she alive? Is she going to be okay? And they looked so scared, and I started laughing. I started laughing so hard, and then finally they were like, oh, she's fine, right? And they started laughing, and we're all on the ground, crying, roaring, laughing. Let me tell you, that one imperfect moment, that one mistake did more for our team building than all the team bond building things that we had done all week long. We were like little kids just hollering at silly old me falling on my chops. So eventually they helped me up and they dusted me off. They made sure that nothing really was broken, and we giggled about it all night. I got free beer all night. I got slaps on the back all night. They were like, girl, if we only had our cameras out, you would have went viral. I was so glad they didn't have their cameras out. But it was fun, right? And I learned so long ago to laugh at myself, that I'm going to make mistakes, no matter how perfect I may try to be. And that life sometimes is lifing. I gave them also the permission to do the same, to laugh at me by laughing at myself. So, you know, I thought about that moment, and I know they probably would have wanted to laugh at me anyway, but that's okay. I didn't allow my falling on my back to paralyze me or keep me in shame or be embarrassed. I learned that you can laugh at your mistakes. Now that is not to say that there are things in life that needs accuracy and precision. That's not to say that we go through life, flippantly, because there's nurses in the house, right? There's doctors in the house. They know what it means to make sure that things are done properly. But things do happen, and you correct your mistakes, and you learn from them. But you don't allow them to paralyze you and to keep you stuck in a sense of, I have to be perfect, right? No, perfectionism, it stifles our ability to move forward. I've met so many people, and they don't move forward in their lives because they are afraid of making mistakes, afraid they might fail, or they are afraid that they might be embarrassed or worry about what other people might think about them. I told a friend of mine that I really don't give I don't care what people think about me. Of course I want people to think kindly of me. But people are going to think what they want to think anyway. So what I need to do is to do my best. And that's not being a perfectionist. It's unfortunate to find that so many people live their whole lives waiting for the perfect moment, or for the perfect conditions, or for the perfect person or persons, or for the perfect job, and then just don't do anything. And what does perfect look like anyway? Most of the time, our idea of what perfect looks like is society's definition of perfection, or our own self-imposed ideas, or sometimes the ideas passed down to us by our parents and caregivers. And then, even in our own philosophy, We hear the word perfection tossed around, and it just reinforces the self-imposed ideas of having to be perfect. Yet when we're talking about spiritual perfection, do we really have a true understanding of what that means compared to the human concept of perfectionism? When we don't have a clear understanding of the difference between the two, it can cause us not to seek out the help that we need to have better health or a better life in general because we feel ashamed or embarrassed that we're not so-called perfect. I can't ask for an affirmative prayer. I might be judged for not being able to heal or manifest for myself. They might ask, what's in my consciousness that brought this about? You know, Ernest Holmes, the founder of religious science and the science of mind philosophy, said, humankind is potentially perfect, but free will and self-choice cause them to appear imperfect. The spiritual perfect person is perfect, but their individual use of life and the law enables them to cover a perfect idea in an apparent imperfect cloak. Holmes' many references of the spiritually perfect person is in relationship to the indwelling spiritual nature of our being and our spiritual potential. He knew that trial and error is a part of our human experience. Children know that. Scientists and cooks know that. He was pointing us towards our indwelling nature, which is the divine spark which we all possess, not our human need for perfectionism. We are to remember that the choice of our embodiment of the divine nature is always up to us, hence the imperfect cloak. He said that the divine incarnation is inherent in our nature. Inherent means existing as an inseparable part of who we are. It's intrinsic. The question then becomes, how much of this reality with a capital R are we going to express in our lives? Our spiritual potential is inherent possibility. And the science of mind philosophy guides us to look deeper in our relationship with this universal power, which is the very source of our innate spiritual potential. We are always at choice as to whether we expand our consciousness to our spiritual potential of unity, wholeness, and well-being with that one perfect presence through a deeper understanding of our relationship with it. Holmes knew that each of us, each person has a divine spark, and that the real person with a capital R is an individualization of the one spirit. He also knew that if we are limited, it is not by spiritual principle, but our own inability to see more of our innate potential and the divine ideal. Holmes was not talking about the concept of earthly perfectionism, which is in and of itself rooted in a concept of lack and want. His words were meant to wake us up from the sleep of the paradigm of human collective consciousness. For he knew that for far too long, humankind had forgotten their divine connection and has been walking around in a self-imposed funk of separation. Now is the time to rethink the old adage, practice makes perfect. Practice makes you skillful. Practice provides knowledge and information. Practice is useful in honing your skills and a craft. However, we should never make perfection in and of itself our goal. You see, we can get caught up in the methodology of when we do that, we lose sight of the experience we're practicing for. We lose sight of the beauty and possibilities available to us. When we do our spiritual practices, we do them to align ourselves with the divine within us that is perfect, not to monitor whether we're breathing in a perfect way, not to monitor whether our mudras are correct, because I can never get them correct, right? Not if we're sitting in a perfect lotus position, and then, you get that crook in your back, or whether our affirmative prayer is in the right order, or did we use all 5 steps? No, we have practiced to experience the love and the joy and the peace and the wholeness and the perfection of the divine I am within us. Not practicing to be perfect in form, but practice to be perfect in love, perfect in alignment, perfect in connection. Ernest tells us the way to proceed is to begin right where we are. He didn't say proceed when you get it perfect in your finite understanding of the word, but to embrace who you are right now as we move through our spiritual journey of this thing called life. Brené Brown, in her book, The Gifts of Imperfection, and if you haven't read it, it is a must read. She said perfectionism is not the same as striving to be your best. Perfectionism is the belief that if we live perfect, look perfect, and act perfect, we can minimize or avoid the pain of blame, judgment, and shame. It's a shield. Perfectionism is at its core about trying to earn approval and acceptance. When Ernest Holmes mentioned over 50 times in the Science of Mind book the word perfect, and it was over 50, I got tired of counting. He wasn't referring to perfectionism as Brené just described it, where she said perfectionism is at its core about trying to earn approval and acceptance. No, he was conveying to us that the love and law of God is perfect, that the Spirit of the living God is complete, whole, and lacking in nothing. And our divine nature is perfect. And as we come more and more into alignment with the divine presence within us, we experience Spirit's love and allow its perfect law to work through and for us. So, in closing, as we walk in our human incarnation, let's practice more compassion for ourselves and others. Let's laugh more when we swing and miss. When I was a kid, I used to get teased about how big my nose was. If your nose is a bit so-called imperfect, embrace it. I have. I just, put a little makeup on that contour, Or if your body is not runway or GQ ready, walk the runway anyway and pose for the camera one time. Just pose for the camera one time. Let's start today embracing our human selves and know that we are so much more than this body, and simply let go of earthly perfectionism and raise our consciousness to remember our true spiritual nature, which is always whole, perfect, and complete. And so it is.